Hello and a very warm welcome. Thanks for tuning in to your favorite news destination. You're watching In Your Interest with me, Kabir Naqvi. And on the first segment, we're going to talk about Joe Kent's resignation letter. A top U.S. counterterrorism official, quits his post, questioning the very rationale behind this war. So, was Iran really a threat, or is Washington fighting a battle that's been shaped somewhere completely else? Let's break this down for you. A major fracture that has opened up within the Trump administration that challenges the very foundation of the current conflict with Iran. Joseph Kent, the director of the U.S. National Counterterrorism Center, has resigned, making him the first senior official in the Trump administration to quit publicly over this current war. He put out a stinging rebuke of the White House's military strategy on the platform X. Joseph Kent, a Gold Star husband and a veteran who has personally felt the cost of war, is not going quietly. He claims that Iran posed no imminent threat to the United States and also alleges that the push for war is being driven not by American interests but by pressure from Israel and powerful lobbyists. Kent also accused the administration of running a misinformation campaign to push the country into this conflict. He said the war does not benefit the American people and warned that it could repeat the mistakes of the Iraq war. His departure marks the first time a senior official has publicly broken ranks over this conflict, warning that the United States is repeating the same intelligence mistakes that led to the Iraq war. He urged President Donald Trump to reverse course on the Iran conflict. And President Donald Trump has wasted no time firing back, dismissing Kent as weak on security and insisting that military action was necessary to prevent a nuclear catastrophe. He says Iran was a sick nation. It was going to blow up the world. The White House has dismissed the idea that Iran posed no imminent threat. They called Iran the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism and said Iran has killed Americans and waged war against the United States. Trump warned about Iran's expanding missile and naval capabilities, claiming that Iran could hold the US and the entire world hostage.
I always thought he was a nice guy, but I always thought he was weak on security, very weak on security. I didn't know him well, but I thought he seemed like a pretty nice guy. But when I read his statement, I realized that it's a good thing that he's out, because he said that Iran was not a threat. Iran was a threat. Every country realized what a threat Iran was. The question is whether or not they wanted to do something about it.
Now, adding fuel to the debate, the British National Security Advisor has said that a nuclear deal with Iran was close to finalization before the US strikes began. The proposal included a pause on Iran's uranium enrichment, zero stockpiling of enriched material, and strict checks by the International Atomic Energy Agency. Up to 80% sanctions relief was offered as part of that deal. And UK officials saw no imminent threat from Iran that would justify this kind of military action. Iran showed an unusual willingness for a long-term, enforceable agreement. And the strikes came just days after talks in Geneva and before a follow-up meeting in Vienna. Sources say the United States' team misread Iran's offer and lacked the technical depth that was needed to understand them. The talks were mediated by Oman and aimed to avoid war through diplomacy. Critics say the decision to strike may have bypassed a viable diplomatic solution. Analysts point to Israel's opposition to any deal that would keep Iran's nuclear program intact. And this raises questions about who is in the driving seat, who is driving the Iran war, the US or is it Israel? Israel opposed the US-Iran talks and backed military action instead. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has warned that Iran's nuclear program threatens Israel's existence. Analysts say Israel pushed for a regime change in Iran, and there are claims that US envoys acted in line with Israel's position. The talks collapsed despite Iran offering major nuclear concessions. The war began soon after signals of a diplomatic breakthrough. Three different neutral parties spoke about that. The big questions that we're trying to understand. If the counterterrorism chief claims there was no imminent threat, What specific intelligence did the White House use to justify immediate military action? And is it incumbent on the White House to then put that justifiable intelligence in the public domain? Why did the US move forward with strikes if a deal involving 80% sanctions relief and zero stockpiling was, as the UK claims, close to being signed? They said this was surprising, the kind of concessions Iran was ready to take on. And to what extent is US military policy in the West Asian sector being shaped by the security requirements of Israel versus the direct national interests of the United States? With us on the broadcast, Ambassador Suresh K. Goyal, former Indian diplomat. Very good evening to you, Ambassador. Lev Aran, Israeli columnist and journalist, with us on the broadcast. Adit Kothari, foreign affairs and geopolitical expert. Adit, always a pleasure to have you with us on News 9. Ambassador, the rationale behind this war is now being questioned. We're not talking about the LPG crunch anymore. We're talking about why this war and who's really in the driving seat. So, if Iran posed an imminent threat, why do assessments from the IAEA last year, from somebody like Tulsi Gabbard herself, and even past US intelligence, why do they suggest otherwise? What are we missing here? When a senior officer like Joseph Kent blows the lid on something like this, says this war was avoidable and not in American interest, what are we missing? What do we understand? What is the significance of this resignation in the so many days of the war that we've witnessed?
Good evening, Kabir. I think you have put the finger on the point, really. You're right at the top of the things here. The question here is who was driving the war? And if we want to really understand that, I think we need to go back to the October 2023, when Hamas attack actually began. There was a Hamas attack in Israel. More than 500 people died over there.
Yeah.
The fact is that as far as Israel is concerned, Iran has been the biggest threat, not just Iran, but Iran and the proxies, which is Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis. And therefore, it always has been, if you recall, even at that time, just, was it October last year? When there was an attack from Israel, 12 days war began, and there was an attack on the Iranian facilities from Israel. And they, soon after, USA followed with Operation Hammer.
Midnight Hammer, yeah.
Midnight Hammer, when they claimed to have destroyed the entire nuclear infrastructure of Iran, and the missile bases and everything, which obviously either that was correct or what is happening now is correct. So the point really here is, if you look at the statements from not just Kent, but if you look at the statements from Omani's foreign minister, the UK National Security Advisor, and also, I mean, more than anything at all, if you look at the reports from the IAEA, who have consistently clarified that Iran did not have a nuclear weapon program, and that Iran was doing all the nuclear things under reporting, safeguard reporting to IAEA, with the exception of a small period when Ahmadinejad was the president of Iran, and there was a breakdown in cooperation between Iran and IAEA for a short while. Iran has always cooperated with the IAEA in terms of sharing information. And therefore, it is not nuclear program. And please do remember, in January, while nuclear program was the issue, very soon it expanded to the missile. It expanded to the proxy war, Iranian proxies. So the agenda was not just nuclear program. Agenda was not just missile. Agenda was Iran and what was seen as the Iranian proxies. And clearly that was not the USA. It was Israel. And therefore, what has now come in the open is not really a secret. I think that is what the community of international strategy experts had been talking all the time, that this is the war in which USA has been dragged, practically dragged into these kind of actions by
You're right, Ambassador.
one
And
country.
you've given us those credible examples that when diplomacy is active, both times, even in the 12-day war last time, There was some sort of diplomacy that was happening. Even here, they had talks in Geneva. They were waiting for the third round of talks in Vienna with all those neutral parties that, like I mentioned earlier on as well, the UK NSA said that it was surprising the kind of concessions that Iran was ready to take on. What justifies military action when diplomacy is active, and when something like this is happening, unilaterally, the United States of America taking action, notwithstanding the argument whether who was in the driving seat? How damaging is this for US's own credibility as a negotiating power in the future?
Sorry, is that question addressed to me?
Yes, Ambassador.
Yes. See, the point is that USA continues to be a major power in the world, and therefore USA is seen by most of the countries, including Indo-Pacific, China, ASEAN, as a country with a credible power to be able to swing quote-unquote deals. And therefore, even if Trump is not relied upon, USA as a power to reckon with will remain there. What happens now really here is that after this Iran war, the kind of difficulties, the economic difficulties that US has gone into, the gasoline has gone beyond $5 a gallon. Midterm elections are close by.
Yep.
And therefore, it is not the USA per se. It is the presidency which has been called into question and the result consequences of his actions. Therefore, what I would say here is that one immediate result of this is China is going to become a more predominant power in Gulf.
Yeah.
Russia is becoming more important.
And imagine, Ukraine, this is all happening, Ambassador, before Donald Trump is going to be sitting across the table with Xi Jinping, and Xi Jinping is going to have the better bargaining chip over there. Well, let's not digress. Let's bring in the other panelists as well. Ambassador, I'm going to come back to you.
Yeah.
Lev Aran, Israeli columnist and journalist. Many thanks for taking on the time, Mr. Aran. If diplomacy was still ongoing, and that's what analysts and experts are talking, if diplomacy was still ongoing, why not allow that process to conclude before escalation? We have three different neutral parties, a Gulf expert who's been speaking on the condition of anonymity. Then you've got, a voice from Oman that's been a mediator for the longest time. Then you've got the NSA of the United Kingdom. They're all saying there was no imminent threat. Then why this military action? And now that Joe Kent has come out with his resignation letter, what do you make of that resignation letter and the death of diplomacy and dialogue in this particular case?
Thank you for having me. From this resignation letter, what I'm thinking is that some ultra-right MAGA players simply, some of them hate Jews. I would not be surprised if we see in the next job of the same officer that he hates Israel, that he hates India, that he's getting salary from places that we cannot even imagine. His letter is a pure bullshit. He accuses Israel of the death of his wife in a war that Ariel Sharon, our late prime minister, he opposed the war. He told President Bush that this war is quite stupid, but still is blamed in this letter. I do not believe that the negotiations were going that smoothly or that good. I think Americans believed that they are cheated by Iranians time and again. But most importantly, there is one big difference between India and Israel. India has a real independent foreign policy, while Israel cannot walk over the red lines of America. It is always America who is dictating, and it is always Israel who has to say yes. And we saw few times that Netanyahu had to take deals that were really nightmarish from the domestic politics of Israel, but still he had to say yes.
What are those red lines? Mr. Iran, what are those red lines that the United States has pulled across?
You could see in Gaza so many times that once America told Israel, this is a red line, Israel said yes. Even with the hostage deal, maybe even in this studio, some of the pundits said that if it was not Trump, the current right-wing Israeli government would not sign the agreement with Hamas because it was nightmarish in the desi politics of Israel for the right-wing parties. So to imagine that Israel is dictating and that America is like the chamcha of Israel, it's so ridiculous. It's simply not understanding the way America and Israel are
Before
behaving.
I bring in Adit, help the viewers understand, how does this serve the American interest first? I mean, just because Donald Trump says Iran is going to keep the entire world hostage, or has the capacity with its missile program to keep the entire world hostage, is that justifiable enough? Is that enough for this kind of military action that we've been seeing? More than 8,000 targets struck, and your gut is going to wrench when you hear about what happened in Minab with the schoolgirls over there, about 170 of them. So how is this helping out the America first tangent? What's in it for America? Help the viewers understand.
Okay, America could be right and America could be wrong. Okay, this is like a different dispute. If America did the right thing or the wrong thing, we may disagree about it. But the decision was an American decision. It was an American decision that once Iran is strong enough, the allies of America, it means Qatar and it means the Emirates, it will be nightmarish for them to be independent. Like if you take the state of Bahrain, most of the Iranian regime do not even recognize Bahrain as a sovereign country. For them, it is like the 14th, district of Iran. So this is like the paradigm of America. They may be right or they may be wrong, but still, it is what Trump really believes, and this has nothing to do with Israel. America is the one who dictates and leading the war,
right.
and also Israel is there.
Okay, Adit, what do you make of that? Israel has got nothing to do with this. Is that your assessment as well? And Joseph Kent spoke about a powerful lobby, quote unquote. Would you have an understanding of what this powerful lobby is, what he's trying to imply? You'll have to unmute yourself, Adit. My apologies.
Apologies. I think Mr. Kent has been fairly candid. Critics have long pointed out that, there are instances where Israeli intelligence have basically shaped US foreign policy, most famously, leading up to the Iraq war. And Mr. Netanyahu himself has been on record saying, how Iraq has been a nemesis of the Western world, and, how they have been trying to enrich uranium and trying to build nuclear weapons. Ultimately, what happened thereafter, post 2003, the rest is history. We all know absolutely nothing was found. So we know for a fact that, there is a considerable amount of influence that the Israeli intelligence community has over United States foreign policy, and that cannot be denied. I mean, we can all sit here and argue about, the chicken came from the egg and the egg came from the chicken.
Mr. Iran says that Israel's got nothing to do with this. It's all the America's bidding, and they've drawn the red lines, and Israel dare not cross that red line ever.
Which is why I said it's like the chicken and egg story. But the bottom line is, Mr. Kent's revelation coming out at this hour basically points to two things. He is the national security, the main person holding national security information. He is the one who prepares the brief on a daily basis to the president. So the fact that, he has come up with such a revelation, and, Trump now coming to damage control, saying that, he's a nice man, but, he was always weak. So if he was weak, why was he your national security advisor in the first place? And that too for 8 months. That in itself has gaping holes. So it's just a ploy of damage control at the end of the day, nothing more than that. But it points to the larger trajectory that American blood and treasure has been spent again, while Israel is going to be achieving its strategic goal of eliminating an enemy. So basically, Israelis are going to have the Americans fight another war for them, eliminate another enemy, and yet again, we will see the Middle East in absolute turmoil. I mean, Iraq, Syria, these were all playbooks which were designed by the Israelis, executed by the Americans, and the world basically suffers. So while it's American blood and treasure going into it, the ultimate beneficiary also remains the Americans. So the American interest here is not the fact that they've lost $16.5 billion as a consequence of going into this war, but what they're going to be earning throughout the course of the next few years. I mean, now you look at the LPG prices. Who is the net beneficiary? It is America. You look at the choke point. Helium gets choked. The second biggest producer is Qatar. They are not being able to either supply to the Chinese or the Taiwanese. Who is the net beneficiary? It's the Americans. So they get to have leverage and control over the natural resources. And as a consequence, that is where they benefit. And from an Israeli standpoint, they've just eliminated the Iranian powers, and a good Iran is in no interest either for the Middle East or for Israel. A crippled Iran is in the interest of all of these stakeholders. So everybody is in it to ensure that, Iran can be crippled and completely paralyzed.
Yeah,
Kabir.
a matrimony of convenience. Ambassador Goyal, is the US acting in alignment, or is it being seen globally as acting because of Israel? Take a look at some of this data. There seems to be no evidence that Iran had a nuke, or were they trying to seek it, versus you've got Israel's nuclear opacity. That's the policy that they follow. Yet they've got 90 nuke heads. They've tried and tested nuclear power off the coast of South Africa back in the 1970s. In the 1960s, you had about 100 to 300 kilograms of highly enriched uranium that disappeared from a said Apollo plant, and the then Attorney General said that there needs to be no criminal case on this. And since the last 3 decades, according to Benjamin Netanyahu, Iran is just months away from this nuke. So they have enriched uranium to up to about 60%, way above civilian use, but that's still way below a powerful nuke warhead. Maybe they were trying to get it, maybe they weren't trying to get it. But we do need to give some credit to all these 3 nuclear parties that were clearly vouching for Iran to take those concessions. So is it in alignment? I don't want to use the word puppet here. Is it in alignment, or is it acting because of Israel?
Kabir, let me put it this way. I do not know why Trump began what he began, but it is very, very difficult to understand his mind. If he has a mind.
Well, you know what, Ambassador? To that list, add Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, add Marco Rubio, because every press conference, they look equally bewildered as to how they're going to tackle questions next. Last time, Pete Hegseth said, there are no outcomes. The president is shaping outcomes as we go.
Absolutely. What is happening today in West Asia is a political imbroglio. There is no political outcome at all. There is no political decision making. There is no political off-ramp. There is no political process there at all. I have never seen a war, never, even Gaza, what happened in Gaza, or what happened in Venezuela. I have never seen a war where there was not a political framework. This is a completely nonsensical war that I'm seeing. Having said it, I mean, if you look at it, who is actually benefiting out of it? Today, USA is having to withdraw Patriot missiles from South Korea, bring it to the Gulf theater. China is gaining ascendance in Indo-Pacific. USA is losing the Indo-Pacific pivot. They are going to have to postpone the visit to China simply because they are at a losing wicket for the time being, and they will have to redefine the agenda. It's very likely that Iran actually may trust China more than the Gulf countries or the USA. Gulf countries who have lost a lot of their economic power, they may have to depend upon China. So the net result of all this is who is gaining? Russia and China. Ukraine is finished. Ukraine is finished. And therefore, in this kind of a war where the USA is basically, they may be gaining on the gasoline price, but the midterm elections are in November. If the gasoline is selling at $5, more than $5 a gallon, who is going to vote for Trump? And if Trump loses power, maybe the USA will earn from the gasoline. But what? So what? Therefore, on the whole, it is the USA which turns out to be a loser in strategic sense, in Gulf, in Indo-Pacific.
Okay. Credible, pertinent points, Ambassador. Mr. Iran, what is your answer to all those, and I've been going through various social media posts, the entire world is talking about the Iran-Israel/US war. What do you have to say to those people that are constantly drawing parallels with the WMD, the Bushes, what happened in Iraq? Joseph Kent in his letter talks about the grave miscalculations and we haven't learnt our lessons from what happened in Iraq. What do you have to say to those that are constantly drawing these parallels between what's happening right now vis-a-vis the WMD fiasco that happened in Iraq in history?
I cannot go through a history lesson to each and every person who is mistaken. But I think it is enough to open Wikipedia, see that Prime Minister during the Iraq War was not Netanyahu, but Ariel Sharon, that Ariel Sharon told Bush, don't go to this war. It is crystal clear that when Trump said that the war between Ukraine and Russia is because of India, because India is buying oil from Russia, we all understood it is like a crazy statement. So we have a far-right forces in America. They hate Jews. I do believe they also hate India. And we do need to go back to the facts. And the fact is that, of course, Israel is giving a very important intelligence to America. In this, I think all the three of us, we agree, okay? But if we are asking ourselves, okay, who is the leader and who is helping the leader is America. And Israel never forgets that Israel is an ally of America. Israel is not leading America. This is simply bullshit.
Okay. Israel has long warned about Iran's nuclear ambitions, Mr. Iran. Very quickly, would you like to tell the viewers what specific intelligence justifies this action at this point in time? Because the White House is keeping shut. They don't want to say it. They're saying they kept that information from Joseph Kent also, who Adit rightly pointed out, he's the one who's making the briefs for the president in the morning. So if the United States and the top intelligence kept that details, away from somebody like Joseph Kent, do you think it's incumbent on America? This war has completely disrupted the global oil supply. Is it incumbent on the White House to now at least tell the world some sort of information, some sort of evidence as to whether there was a nuclear weapon that Iran was trying to seek?
Unfortunately, Joseph Kemp and Tulsi and all the other guys, they are there not because they are big experts, but because they are very loyal to Trump. Unfortunately, this is the way Trump too is handled. This is the reason why Trump humiliated India for 1 year. It was crystal clear. Iranians themselves said that they wish to destroy Israel and the West and America. So once the Iranians are building capabilities and say things openly, I do not understand why we need to justify them in the first side. I don't have the intelligence, and also you don't have them. Any of us, we don't have them. But what we know is that Iranians were building capabilities and had the will to destroy Israel and to destroy their neighbors.
Yeah, which was unilaterally decided. Tomorrow, I'm just worried about my own country. Tomorrow, the United States can come and call us out, say India is a sick nation.
Maybe not tomorrow.
India is a sick nation, and India should not have nuclear capabilities, nuclear capacity. That's something that, it could be anybody, and they've already started talking about Cuba. I've completely run out of time here. Adit, final 30 seconds. Is this the new Vietnam for Donald Trump? He started it, but who knows how he's going to come out of it now? Or what's the end game here?
Sorry, I was on mute again. I think if this prolongs anywhere beyond June or July, I think it may as well be the nail on the coffin for both Donald Trump and the Republican Party, because, them going into a midterms with skyrocketing inflation, high economic ramifications will be absolutely self-sabotage and, a suicidal moment. So, Donald Trump and the Republican Party, if they want to secure the midterms. I think they need to secure a off-ramp now. They need to get global actors and the United Nations galvanized now to basically ensure that an off-ramp can be organized and census can prevail and people can maintain some sort of a status quo. Kabir.
Okay, all right. We'll leave it at that. Adit, always a pleasure to have you with us. Mr. Durand, many thanks for taking those questions head on. And Ambassador, always a pleasure listening to your robust bank of diplomatic knowledge. Many thanks for taking up the time. We're going to slip into a quick commercial breather here. Top developments, our second segment on In Your Interest continues on the other side. Don't go anywhere.
खेलता है झूलता उछलता है दौड़ता कभी कभी दौड़ कराता है आगे आगे बढ़ता है इंडिया अमूल दूध पीता है इंडिया.
Someone to bring your vision into reality. When human vision meets artificial intelligence, storytelling enters new territory. Two distinct categories: brand films, short films, evaluated by the best of the best, seen by those who shape the industry.